This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From Not a Pipe Publishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Okay. Today's secret word is passport.
If I take my time.
Welcome, everyone. Today's guest is Melinda Mitchell. Melinda Mitchell is a sci-fi and fantasy writer currently living in Wisconsin, but she was born in Oregon, raised in Alaska, lived in the Boston area, Oklahoma, and Seattle before moving to the Milwaukee area almost 2 years ago, where she lives with her husband and son. She's written several nonfiction articles on parenting, disability, and religion, and specifically on the intersection of theology and science fiction, and has co-authored 2 academic papers on the subject. Her debut novel, Next of Kin, a sci-fi retelling of the Book of Ruth, arrives on December 12th from RS Entertainment, a small press in the Seattle area, and you can order through Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and the RS Entertainment website. Welcome, Melinda. It's great to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Benjamin. It's good to be here.
Yes, I am very excited about this book. I'm excited to get to hear about it. But first, we have to tell everybody about the costumes that we chose to wear in this show. You know, we always dress up in costume. And because of this, well, why don't you tell our podcast listeners what you chose to wear?
Yes, because it's the holiday season, I went with the ugly holiday sweater theme, and I found probably something that is the most hideous thing I've ever could imagine wearing. It is supposed to be, I think, like a Christmas tree, but it's more like green shag carpet with some lights that work, and I think that's supposed to be tinsel. It's pretty hideous, and probably will never see the light of day after this show.
Yep. But now it's forever. Like, now the folks on YouTube are like, yep, I can see that sweater. I went to a Christmas party last night that was ugly sweater themed, although I forgot, so I was not in an ugly sweater when I showed up relatively early, and I was like, oh, I forgot. And then I was like, that's not all bad. But I borrowed this sweater from one of my colleagues, Paul. Thank you, Paul, for lending this to me. It is a sweater that makes no sense. It is green stripes and then this big giant orange tiger in sequins. I don't know why, with a Santa hat, why a Christmas tiger? I have no idea. As soon as I saw it, I was like, that is an amazing ugly sweater, Paul. You have to let me borrow that for the show. And he was.
It has pretty much rendered me speechless.
Yeah. Well, what I mean, I was talking to him about, maybe this is, if we were in a place where the local sports team was a tiger, it would make some kind of semblance of sense. But yeah, orange, red, and green, for one thing, don't go together. And then, yeah, it's atrocious. So those of you listening on the podcast will just have to imagine all the colors being thrown at the YouTube viewers right now. It's a lot. So I have been so excited to have you on the show. Amanda Cherry was on a couple weeks ago, and she mentioned your book, and I got very excited about it. So tell everybody about Next of Kin. This sounds fascinating to me.
Yes. So it is a sci-fi retelling of the Book of Ruth from the Bible. And yeah, this is kind of this weird intersection of sci-fi and theology. About 20 years ago, I was in seminary, which is graduate school for really nerdy religious people. And there's a lot of intersection between sci-fi and theology. But I had this idea of rewriting Ruth as a science fiction story, of traveling across the galaxy with your mother-in-law. What would that be like? And so I had this idea. I actually started writing it in 2016, in November 2016. And we all kind of remember what happened in November 2016. Kind of the world gets turned upside down for us. And it really became clear that this was a refugee story. I mean, that was at the heart of it. And what does it mean to uproot your entire life and have to start again? And for those of you who may have some background in the Bible, right before Ruth is the book of Judges, which is pretty awful, atrocious war.
It's a little grim. Yeah.
It's grim. So in Christian Bibles, they placed Ruth here as kind of a palate cleanser, but it really is the background. The story is war. So I bring that into the background of this story, is these war refugees who are traveling across the galaxy. And it sounds like a great concept, right? And I I got excited. I was smart in that this was my NaNoWriMo novel. It was kind of the third book I was querying. So I knew enough not to query in December. I knew I
Yes,
needed to
good,
sit on it,
wise.
needed to revise. I had like 2 beta readers. And then in April, there was like a Twitter notice from one of the big name agents who was like, I'm going to take all queries in the next half hour. So I sent it in and I got a full request, which is like unheard of.
Yeah.
First query, full request. It ended up in a rejection, but with some positive comments. And what ended up happening is I had started too soon. I really needed to sit on it longer, but I queried a lot, got a lot of full requests, got some revised resubmits, which is great, but ultimately ended up in rejections. And I finally sat down with an agent who is a friend who said, this would be a really good small press book because some people don't want to touch it because Bible themes. Some people aren't sure about it because it starts off, it's very women-centered, which is great now. But even 7 years ago, it was a little bit harder to get in. So I started the small press circuit, and I have met the unfortunate consequence of small press life, which is sometimes money runs out and they shut down, like my
Yes.
last press did. So I've actually been with 2 other presses. One was an editorial vision that didn't work out, one shut down. And I had kind of given up on this book. And I was working on another book, talking to Amanda, I think it was Amanda, on Facebook about this. And another friend, Scott Magner, said, tell me more about this book. I have a small press. And miracle of miracles, Eris Entertainment is publishing my book on Tuesday. So very exciting. It's been a long run. And it's been 7 years in the making. So that's kind of the don't give up story. And even if it goes on the shelf for a while, doesn't mean it's there permanently. And
Yes.
I learned a lot in the process. I learned about what mistakes I made in the earlier editions that I had to revise. I learned a lot about the industry, and it's been changing. And so it's been a long haul, but I'm very happy with where it's at now. And it's, I think, the right time for this book. So very
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is an exciting time for this book. I mean, I think, we are about to, a lot of folks are about to remember 2016. Like they're about to go, oh, yeah, the Muslim ban and families being separated and people being, locked up. And I am hopeful that people will go, we don't want to go back to that, but we may. I am not confident. And so either way, having a story to remember, this is what it, this is, it is a good time for a refugee story and to be
Yes.
thinking about the safety, the care, the whether we are welcoming, this is.
And how do we move on from the past? There's a lot of that in the story, which deals with some kind of timely political issues today of what do we do with violence and history of violence and ethnic cleansing and cultures and when there are, combating views of history, and how do we move on with that? And so I'm a little bit nervous about my book coming out right now, but my publisher was like, no, it's a timeless story because this stuff keeps happening, right? We keep living through this. So it's a timeless story in that, which is sad, but also
I would kind of love to live in a universe where that story is out of date. I don't think that's going to happen in the next few hundred years. So
right. And I hope it gives a little bit of hope in the story. So
yeah. Well, I am very excited to read it, and it drops. I mean, so this show will come out on Monday night, Pacific time, Tuesday. So it'll be dropping the same day. So folks who are hearing this, you can get your copy of Next of Kin now. By all means, I will be ordering it immediately because I am very excited to see how you pulled that all together. The story of Ruth is just a wonderful story. My kind of history religiously, both, I know about MDivs, and both my folks are pastors, so
okay.
But I'm ethnically Jewish and have spent enough time in synagogue to know the importance of the Ruth story in the Jewish tradition as well, because we are constantly migrants, and so that story is really important in the Jewish tradition as well. And it's a marvelous story, but a sci-fi version is like right in my wheelhouse. So I'm
hoping that will kind of hit, and I'm hoping it will hit readers who do know the story, who maybe don't consider themselves religious anymore, but find value in the story. That's like my whole point. And I was scared when I did this book. I was like, I don't want it to get shelved in the Christian fiction section. Right. No, this is a story that is like a mythology that is told, You have all these other great stories of all the great myths of the world. This is a myth, and myth is not a bad word. Myth is a story that has this point that still lives on. And that's why that was my hope with this story. And maybe there'll be some more stories in this vein.
Yes, yes. That would be, yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, I mean, that you're right. That story is not by any means limited to any religious tradition. It is a story about, somebody who is trying to make a new life in a foreign land. And that is something that transcends culture and geography. And I love the idea of redoing it as a sci-fi. That's cool. What was tell readers a little bit without spoiling anything about the kind of sci-fi universe you created for that.
Yeah, so it is a galaxy. It's a different galaxy. It's actually called the Euphrates Spiral Galaxy. So there's some biblical names that come up, but it is not our galaxy. It is not our universe. It is a universe where there are humans, not really any other alien creatures. Think of more like Firefly. That's really, in fact, I was rewatching Firefly and I realized it's been 20 years since
oh my gosh.
20,
Yeah. Wow, that is wild.
Or was 2005. And but the feel of that universe, so like, because it's the first half, I'm not to spoil too much, the first half is more space travel and the second half is this kind of Wild West world, and it very much does have that Firefly theme. So very much history, culture, there's the clash of technology of like old and new. Yeah, it very much so. If you're a fan of Firefly, you'll probably like Next of Kin.
Well, and the gender politics of these are two women in this world that,
Right.
I mean, that is a powerful part of the Ruth story too. So, oh yeah, looking forward to that very much. So this is a show about what we do when we're not writing, and I know that's tough when you're in that mode where you're like, it's very soon it's going to be dropping, but when you have not been doing the publicity thing and that kind of thing, what has been taking your attention away from writing in terms of pop culture lately?
Yeah, so I'm very much an avid reader, and I actually have thought about this question in that if I wasn't writing, I'd be reading. And there's been times I've wanted to quit writing because there's just so many books I want to read, but it always draws me back to writing. It always does. But I have a lot of friends who are authors, and a lot of friends had books come out recently. So I actually have David Levine's The Coupier Belt Job, which is high stakes, shifting loyalties, a future in flux. It is a kind of Ocean's 11 in our solar system kind of thing, getting the gang back together. So I've started that. And then next up, I have Uncanny Vows by Laura Ann Gilman, which I know Amanda Cherry mentioned. That book just came out. This is the second in a series. I have my TBR pile. I could just not.
Yeah, mine is challenging the structural integrity of my house. Like my house may fall down because of all these books that I have not read yet.
Yeah, my spouse is like, when there's a box or a thing coming, it's like, what?
Yep.
So yeah, and then I did finish reading Patrick Stewart's memoir, Make It So, which was fantastic. And I've been told the audiobook is great because he narrates, but I don't process orally, so I need the book. So I finished that. And then, so I was saying a couple weeks ago, we had a book camp. So at our camp here in Wisconsin, our church camp, the camp director, I'll just say her license plate is TARDIS 1. So that tells you all you need to know.
Yes.
We saw this meme about like summer camp, but instead you stay in bed all day and read books. And we were like, book camp, we're doing it. So we had book camp and it was great. We had a fire going. We had a hot cocoa bar that was open the whole weekend and books. And I would do that. But
that sounds wonderful. How many folks went?
We had 8 this time, but we had a lot of people.
Just a small group.
Time of year, we actually scheduled our next book camp it's going to be January 2025, right after Christmas next time. And people have said, I'm saving this on my calendar, I'm coming. It was fabulous, because you think, oh, I could just do that at home, but everything else distracts you. Imagine going away to a place, we have no TV there. Yeah. We do have Wi-Fi, so if you have your Kindle or other devices, you could get your books. But we sat in front of this fire, we were cozy, and we read. We had a wine and cheese night too, so that was like kind of fun. It was the best. It was the best.
That's a wonderful idea. I love that. Yeah, a reading camp. Oh, well, and that creates kind of the cultural atmosphere of this is what we're all doing. Nobody is pulling you away from your book. Everybody is engaged in a book. So I think that's a great
right. And we did show and tell the first night, like, what are you reading? What do you want to read? And everybody shared their books. And we had a little, because it was Christmas, we did a white elephant book exchange. Everybody brought a book from home. We had some Christmas theme, but It was really fun. It was a
Wow.
great time. So besides reading, though, we love to watch the Great British Baking Show in this house. My husband is a former artisan baker and pastry chef.
Mm.
So watching the Great British Baking Show with him is like watching sports. Like he will yell at the TV, like, just melt the bleeping chocolate.
Yeah, don't
And
do that.
but then when you get towards like the finale, they're doing stuff he doesn't know how to do, and he's into it. So it's fun to watch with him because they'll be talking about things. I'll be like, "What is that?" And he can explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are very much into that show. We've watched the season, and now the holiday specials just dropped on Netflix yesterday, so we've got more shows to watch.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Yeah, that one. And the kindness of the people on there, which I know that that's a
Absolutely.
debatable, that people are like, they're not necessarily being kind, they're just not being mean overtly and publicly,
But
but it is.
this last season, though, for all the critiques of previous seasons, if you've watched, sometimes they've had like some ethnic weeks that were really terribly done. They didn't do any of that. They have great hosts this season. This season is worth it. So if you've taken a break, come back to it. It was very heartwarming. We loved it. We loved watching the finale. It was a good way to kind of escape from what's
Yeah.
going on in the world.
Yeah,
So
from everything. Well, good. So speaking of escaping, what has been pulling you away from your writing in terms of news, in terms of what's going on in the world?
yeah, I mean, like I said, it kind of goes along with my book right now, but the whole conflict in Israel and Gaza, because I'm part of the interfaith community here in the Milwaukee area, it's really hard. It's hard to have conversations about what's happening, and there's a lot of, feelings, and I see what's on social media, and it's just, because you just can't get into the nuance on social media, and you
Exactly.
get into um it just blows up, and people are like, well, if you're not on this side, you're on that side, whatever. But when you start talking with real people with real feelings, like my Muslim friends here, my Jewish friends here, we sat down at a table and there was just the grief that was there, and that we had space for each other's grief, and for everybody to say, this just sucks for everybody. That people, not only people are dying, but people are displaced on both sides of the border, which sometimes doesn't always get covered. And you can't quantify. It's just horrible. It's just
Yeah.
horrible. But I was blessed to be part of a breakfast where I heard a rabbi and an imam say, I hear you, and even though I disagree with some things, I hear your pain and I hear you, and they hugged afterwards, and I'm
Yeah.
like, gosh, can't we have that in our world? That gave me hope. It gave me hope that
Yeah.
we can't fix everything in the world, but we can maybe grow together and try to, at least in this country, build more tolerance and respect and understanding, and work towards a better future. So
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a lot of the kind of, hot takes, Twitter version of the debate reduces complex groups that are not individuals, right? Into this, label versus this label, and not being able to recognize there are individuals within each group who have very different motives from one another.
right, and the identity of this too is something that I think, as a person of privilege, a white cis Christian woman, I don't understand what it's like to be Jewish. I don't understand what it's like to be Palestinian. I don't understand, and I can't.
Right.
And so sometimes I've had to step back from, and some people want my opinion, and I'm like, I
Yep.
really can't. But I can say that I grieve that this is happening, and I want to work for a better future. I want to work against violence. I think that's a stance we can all, let's work against violence.
Yeah. Well, and that has been the way that I've tried to, remind folks is, there are innocent children. There are people who are not involved in the conflict, and in any kind of valence and any kind of perspective that people are bringing to it, if they find themselves saying, in an effort to make this one whole group homogenous and say they should be doing X or Y, if that is causing innocent children to die, they're not viewing people as people. There are certainly, and this is horrific, there are individuals who are, in Hamas, who are perfectly willing to encourage Palestinians to be killed. Like, they
Right.
want this conflict. And there are certainly individuals in the Israeli government who want this conflict because, if you're Bibi Netanyahu, you don't want the conflict to end and then have to deal with the
Exactly.
repercussions, and you don't
Exactly.
want bloodshed. And
Right.
to then say Jews or Palestinians want bloodshed is totally unfair. These are
Absolutely.
small groups that made this conscious decision to let their own people be murdered, so that they, for personal political gain. And having a more nuanced view is difficult when you're viewing these things through Twitter, Facebook, debates, but they are not simple.
Yeah, and I would say the only thing I would say is reach out to your Jewish friends, reach out to anyone you know who's Palestinian or who has ties in Gaza, and just say, hey, I am here for you and just thinking of you. Honestly, that has gone so far with my friends. Is just saying I don't want you to feel alone in this. That's been the big thing.
Yeah, and hopeless. I've talked to a lot of folks who are just feeling like because there is nothing I can do and I am seeing this horror, I just feel a lot of hopelessness, a lot of despair. So yeah, reaching out and saying, I can sit with you in your despair, which is, which is hard, but I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so not to slam on the brakes and change gears too dramatically, but that is kind of what we have to do in times like this. Like we have to be able to go, okay, and now if I sit with that for too long, it becomes all consuming. So how do I kind of force myself out of that? So when you are trying to draw yourself out of the despair about what is going on there, any kind of hobbies that are able to pull you away from that?
Yeah, well, I already mentioned my love of books. I do read a lot. I get sucked into books. I also do play guitar, and I always tell people my guitar skills are good for like youth groups and for the background music at dark parties. Those are not Venn diagrams.
Yeah.
But I do like to play. It's been a while since I played more regularly with family and writing and stuff, but I do enjoy that. And my family and I, we love to go on road trips. That's kind of our way of travel, and we've done a lot of road trips. We were in the Upper Peninsula this last summer. It was gorgeous because, I've not been in the Upper Midwest before moving here, and so we got to go up there and do some hiking and see some waterfalls. And getting outside is like the best thing for me. Like
I was born in Michigan and I've never been to the Upper Peninsula. I've never
oh
been up
my
there.
goodness,
Yeah,
it
need to
is
go up there.
beautiful. They like call it the 51st state. They're very proud of being
I mean, I know the reputation of the Upper Peninsula because folks in Michigan talk about the UP.
Oh yeah,
this foreign land. That's very
right. I know everybody. They're like a lot of my friends who are like from Detroit or Ann Arbor are like Upper Peninsula. I'm like, it's gorgeous up there.
I should check it out.
Superior, it's beautiful. Actually found some independent bookstores when I was up there this summer, which is always fun. And but it's gorgeous. So yeah, that's one of the things I love is doing road trips and going to different places. And I'm really hoping to see more of the Great Lakes and things. So yeah.
Were you camping your way through there, or were you just
we stayed at we got a little cottage thing.
Nice.
So I have a son with disabilities, and so camping, like having a stable place. So we'll go one place and stay there for 3 or 4 days, and then go do day trips and explore. But coming back and having a routine is really important for he's on the autism spectrum. He's nonverbal, and just having that home base works. So that's why road trips work great for us because we can do that. And if worst case scenario, we could always turn around and come home. But luckily, he likes being in the road. He likes car trips. When we're all together, he loves hotels. They usually have pools.
Right. Well, and that's very cool that he's got that flexibility even to go, okay, we can go do this cool thing as long as I've got this home base, and that you've got a system.
We've got our own system for that. So that works out. So we've been doing a lot of road trips with him since he was little. So it works.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is great. So one of the things that I like to ask writers, just to help readers kind of get to know you, so that when they're sitting there reading your book, they're saying, "Oh, I know a little bit about her." So if you were in Dungeons and Dragons, not playing it as a player, but if you were actually a character, what would be your race and class?
If I was a character, probably half elf ranger. That is actually the character I have played in the past. It's been a long time. But that's probably who I would be, I think. I'm sort of part of a campaign now that I have not been able to join. But I have a character who's a Loxodon bard, which is very different than what I've played, but it's kind of fun. So
now, why the half elf wizard or ranger? Why would that be? What does that reveal about you, do you think?
Yeah, I started playing D&D in seminary. That's where I learned how to play. Like the opposite of what most people would think. I was like, no, we're very nerdy.
Oh gosh, yes,
commentaries that are our tomes. So being a wizard, it was like I know what a tome feels like. I know what And then I got into kind of the ranger. I played a half elf ranger who had some, the magic skills. But it's been a long time since I played. But I like the exploration, the kind of leadership role that I would take in those roles. So that was always kind of fun to kind of be the one who'd be like, okay, we're gonna go out. We're gonna go to someplace unknown. We're gonna, go into this cave.
But
Even
but
though
with
all the time
with
say
my
that.
giant books, because I'm a seminarian wizard.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, taking the tomes with you into the cave. Yes, that is very seminary.
And I love that my DM always had, somehow I always found the magic bag that I could stick as many books in it as I want.
Yes.
It wasn't too heavy to carry. Love that. So but yeah, so it was very like physically I could understand where my character was coming from, what she was doing, and that sort of thing. So it was fun.
Okay, so you've been ambushed. You're walking through the woods as a half elf wizard, and you are beset by 3 simple level 1 goblins. What do you do?
Well, I see now. I don't remember what spells I would have used. I would have probably used a spell, but I would have probably tried to put them to sleep because I'm not generally a violent person. I would try to put them to sleep. I might read and bore them to death with some ancient commentary from some other wizard from some long ago. But yeah, I would use some skills that I have from my real life.
Yes. I like the commentary. That's one I have not heard before. I like that a lot. There's the not just the lore, the commentary on the lore.
Right. I love yes, of course, because you have to have the commentary that tells you how
defeating goblins with footnotes.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great. Okay, so we're going to go to our ad break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. Authors, poets, screenwriters, writers of all kinds. We're putting together our team for the Alzheimer's Association's annual The Longest Day fundraiser, and we want you to join us to use your writing superpowers for a good cause. Our team, Writing Against the Darkness, joins together via Zoom or in-person meetups and writes from dawn until dusk on the summer solstice, and we also do a dress rehearsal to kick things off on the shortest day, the winter solstice. So mark your calendars for Thursday, December 21st, 2023, and Thursday, June 20th, 2024. We're teaming up with some wonderful partner organizations to build our team. Thanks to the Author Alchemy Summit, Indigo Editing, Unsolicited Press, Pile Press, the Pile Press magazine Chunk, and Overcut Press for joining with Not a Pipe Publishing in this fundraiser. Links to all the partners in the show notes. If you want to get to network with writers from these great partners, get a whole lot of writing done, and raise funds for Alzheimer's research and care for families suffering from this disease, click on the link in the show notes and join the team. You're going to be writing anyway. Why not write even more and do some extra good for the world? So, Melinda, welcome back. When you have been daydreaming lately, what have you been thinking about?
Oh goodness, I have daydreamed about travel. As we've come out of COVID, I've seen a lot of my friends who've gone, on trips around the world. And I actually renewed my passport this summer.
Me too.
Maybe that will happen.
Yep.
As I shared before, it's a little bit harder with my family, with my son. We haven't actually, he flew a lot when he was younger, but we haven't flown with him recently. So we're thinking about, okay, maybe we'll go visit my mom, his grandma in Alaska. That's a long flight, but there's a red eye from Chicago. So if we did that, then maybe we could do something where we could go to Ireland. My husband is Irish. I've been to Ireland a couple times and we'd like to take him, but I really would also, I've never been to Greece or Italy. I'd love to do that. I'd love to go to Turkey. I also would love to go to the Holy Land, just not right now.
Yeah.
Probably. But I do want to, go there. And then my big dream is I really want to go to New Zealand. I've wanted to go to New Zealand for years. I'm actually my other geeky thing is volcanoes. I love volcanoes. Grew up in Alaska with volcanoes, born in Oregon,
Yeah.
Mount St. Helens. I was there when that happened.
Oh, yeah.
Mount Hood. And so I would love to go see New Zealand. And I would, of course, do the Lord of the Rings thing and go to the Shire and do all of that. So, in fact, one of my coworkers went this past year to New Zealand, and she's got her picture in front of Bilbo's door, and I'm like super jealous. Yes. And I really want to do that. So.
Well, one of my good friends who is also a pastor, that was his dream, and his wife took him, and they went and the whole, I mean, he is, the biggest Lord of the Rings geek, and it was like his dream come true. And I just watched all those pictures and went, oh my gosh, I would love to be there. I mean, it was very generous of him to take us all with him via his photographs. But yeah, that
Yeah,
I would love
that
to.
would
And then
be.
my uncle and aunt are just went, and they, I mean, but outside of the Shire kind of touristy stuff, going to a lot of those places that you see in the films, the mountains, the I mean, it is an amazing mix of geography there in New
Yeah.
Zealand. And
Yeah, I'd
their
love to
photographs
see
are
it. I'd love to see the volcanoes there. I'd love to see, yeah. It's funny because my husband has always wanted to go to Australia, and I'm like, I'm actually not as interested in Australia as I am in New Zealand. No offense to any Aussies on this,
no.
but he wants to do Australia. I want to do New Zealand. So,
Yes. Yeah, I
but
would like to do both. And my fiance is convinced that if we go to Australia, she will be killed by some wildlife of some kind because there are so many bizarre giant, here's a giant spider, here's a deadly snake, here's a, and
yeah.
she's just like, no, Australia's not safe. And I'm going, it's not that far from New Zealand. I'm sure a lot of that wildlife lives there too. No, for some reason, New Zealand feels safe to her and Australia feels dangerous. So,
My brother actually went to Australia. He's in the army and he was there for 2 weeks for some reason. And he's a picture of him hugging a koala. And it's just the cutest
oh
picture.
my
It's
gosh.
like he got to hug a koala bear.
Yeah, see, that's what I need to show Crystal.
Yeah.
She'll be like, I've changed my mind. We do need to.
Yes, you get to hug a koala.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The flight times though, I totally hear you for your son too, kind of planning that out and getting prepared for that. I'm
And
headed out to
that just may
Southeast
be
Asia.
something that's not realistic to take him to
Yeah.
with the length of time to get there. But Ireland might be because it's like 5 hours from Boston and,
Yeah.
and from Chicago about 7 hours. It might be doable to get to Ireland at least. And
Yeah.
to show
Yeah.
him something. I mean, he's been to Canada several
Well,
times.
and you like volcanoes, it's a shorter flight to Iceland and then on
Yes.
to Ireland. And so maybe, well, I guess we have to
Oh
do
my gosh.
over.
Iceland is someplace I want to go.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah, that's because yeah, that's one of those places I would love to see too. Friends who've seen, sent posted pictures. It is a beautiful place. So
Yeah.
so someday Iceland. But yeah,
Mhm.
volcanoes. I mean, yeah, you can see some really cool volcanoes in Iceland. Um announcements, what's, I know you've got the book is dropping right now. What else is going on with you coming up?
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to share is what's been helpful for me in the past is my writing groups and writing, going to writing workshops. And I did want to share about Cascade Writers, which is in the Seattle area. It's actually in Bremerton. And it's a 3-day critique workshop happening in July. And their early bird rate is going to end at the end of December. So this is like your signal to get in on it. It is fabulous. It is a blend of brand new writers, experienced writers. You're put into a critique group, and these critique groups are great. They're meant to build you up, not to tear you down. It's meant to help you with your story. And they're led by professionals, and we've had some big names there. In the past, we had Diana Foe, who was with Tor, and she's now I can't remember what press she's with now. Sorry, but she's big. And we had Arlie Sorg, who's coming back this year, and he's now an agent. So yeah, he's been announced, he's coming back. And there's we've had Jenny Goloboy, who's an agent. We've had Lucianne Driver from the Night Agency before. So you get some big names, and you get opportunities to pitch, you get opportunities to work with professionals, and also just great authors too, who also lead the groups. And it really is, and what I love about it is these people are no longer on a pedestal for you. When you're an early writer, new writer, you're like, oh my gosh, these people, and they're just regular people. And you go out and sing karaoke with them on Saturday night. It's really fun. So I highly recommend it. It's also one of the most affordable workshops that's out there. Like if you've ever applied for a writer's workshop, like they can be pretty expensive. This one's affordable and it has scholarships, and it's well worth it, and it's fun, and it's where I met my critique partners who helped me with Next of Kin. Like seriously, my book would not have happened without going to Cascade Writers. So my announcement would be find whatever writers workshop you can go to, find critique partners, but Cascade Writers, and you can go to cascadewriters.com and learn all about their 3-day workshop. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that going, ooh, I really like that time of year because as a teacher, that might be doable. So
And sign up. And like I said, it's for all levels of writers. We've had people who are well experienced writers who come and still get that kind of nurturing support, and get to have one-on-one conversations, because it's small too. It's never more than like about 50 people. And you do get the opportunity to go to lunch or dinner with these people, and have some one-on-one conversations that just, you don't have that at the big, huge
yeah.
workshops.
Yeah.
And we do get people who fly in from out of state. Does tend to be mostly PNW people, but we have had people fly across the country to attend, and there's just a great community. That's what I love about it, is the community is so supportive and cheers each other on, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I will certainly put that in the show notes. Folks should check that out. I think that's and I totally agree. You know, finding your community. I think readers often think, oh, a writer produced this. No, a team produced this. Like there, everything from the cover, the interior formatting, all the people involved in the editing, sensitivity readers. There were lots of people involved in producing that book you are enjoying. Probably, if you are enjoying it, more people were involved. And so,
Right.
yes, and recognizing the value of those critique partners, and that's important. Find your people.
Yes.
So, what would be a weekly poll that you'd like us to run? We try and run one every week on various social media. What would be your question for the broader world?
Because I was seeing like a lot of people are like, New York Times has already given their hot takes on what happened this past year and things. So we're already like at the end of the year, kind of looking to 2024. So my poll would be resolutions, yay or nay? You do Year's resolutions or not?
I think this is a great question. So, putting your elbow on the scale, where do you stand on the value of resolutions?
I'm a nay on resolutions because I think they usually fall apart. I'm more on, I've done the whole like word intention thing that kind of works for me. So like thinking about a word and what, spending some time. I actually did this last week. I was on a silent retreat and had a word. My word for next year is slow, to slow down and really, not try to rush, because I think, we all we run on deadlines as they whoosh by us. But to slow down and to really be intentional about what I am doing, spending time with my family, my friends, taking time for myself, and just slowing down, because I do better work that way. Both writing and my day job, I do better if I am slowing down and not trying to rush after. So I do intentions, not resolutions.
Yeah, I am. I like the idea of resolutions. I don't like the idea of an arbitrary date on the calendar determining when you start them. And that may be because as a school teacher, my year does not really begin at New Year's.
Right.
And so I really should do my New Year's resolutions in September. This is what I'm going to try for this next school year, or this is what I'm going to try this summer. For me, it's like I need to not say yes to 5 more committees. I need to, those are my kinds of resolutions. I need to not take on more jobs. The New Year's resolution. So it'll be interesting to see where people fall on that. That's a good question. So what is something that you are looking forward to reading? You mentioned a handful, but what else is on your to read pile?
Yes. So I have some big ones, because not just these are my friends' books that came out recently. So that's why they're like, I want to get them out so I can review them and be a good writing friend supporter. But I've had the latest Murderbot Diaries book on my Kindle, and my mom has already read it. So I need to read it before she spoils it for me, because she is a big fan. I also love Megan O'Keefe's sci-fi, and I really loved the first one of this new series, which was, I can't remember the name of it. The next one is The Fractured Dark, and it's
I have
on my
not read that series.
It's in September. The Blighted Stars was the first one. Sorry, yeah. And it came out last spring. It's really fascinating. I love her sci-fi because it's it's just so much. The world building is so rich, and yet it comes down to kind of emotions and character. It comes down to the heart, the things that move your gut, and you're like, you're rooting for these people. And rooting, it's just really exciting. And so I really want to read the next one. It's been on my Kindle since like September, and I just haven't gotten to it. So So I'm looking forward to that. And then Amanda, who was on a couple weeks ago, Amanda and Eric have their Femme Fatales books. I got both of them on my Kindle, and I need to read them. And then I'm very much looking forward to Dawn Calamity when it comes out by Your Press.
That one I've got to read in advance, and let me tell you, you are going to get a huge kick out of it. It's really, really fun. I mean,
yeah, I got to read a draft of it.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
I've read an early draft because I had swapped with her another sci-fi book of mine that's now on the shelf. And then because we were both querying at the time, and so I actually did get to read it, and I was so happy when she found a home for it. So
that one, and I think folks there's this sense in the industry that we have these trends and everybody chases the trend, and then if you genuinely love vampires or steampunk or whatever and you're out of the cycle, just I guess your book's dead. And it's a shame, because there are great books that don't that aren't going to be the trailing end of some fad. Like, who wants to be the trailing end of a fad anyway? And so this one is, if you like airships and kind of steampunk and this other complex, the politics of this complex world, you don't need to wait for that to be in vogue to read a great book. So and I'm excited about the Femme Fatale series, because that mixture of superhero, I love the whole superhero vibe thing, so I'm going to be checking those out as well.
Yeah. No, I'm very happy. And it's just been fun for both of us who kind of went through this. Nobody wants our books. We're putting them on the shelf, feeling dejected. And then both of us, within a few months of each other, finding a small press. So small presses are like, I'm just very excited. There's also, I feel there's more collaboration, more, there's definitely, in this experience this time for me, more communication, more input into cover design, things that you just don't get with the larger presses. I know cover design, you usually get like one yay or nay, and that's it. You get some input on some things and some you don't. And I felt like I had much more, it was more collaborative. Really feel like I'm very excited. I'm excited for Amanda to have that too, that both of us have books that just weren't finding a home and then have found a home.
Yeah, folks, out there in the reading world, there are distinct advantages to the big presses. I certainly won't dispute that. If you want somebody who's got publicists that are a sales staff of 6 or 7 people who are just working on your book, I mean, there are distinct advantages. But in exchange for getting that team that is going to take that book from you and run with it, you give up all kinds of power. They now get to run with it, and they do their own thing,
Yeah, and there's certain genres that do better with with the big press, and certain age groups and things like that. So there's things to keep in mind, because like I'm probably still going to query some projects with presses, but this specific, especially Amanda's steampunk with the airships, it's just gorgeous world building, an incredible main character, and I'm just very excited for her. And then same thing for me. I think it just fit better with the small press than where it was going to get lost. They couldn't figure out where it was going to go on the shelf.
And that was my first novel was, religious satire. It's all the various gods of a whole bunch of different myth systems interacting in our world in kind of a comic way. And I had, a lot of agents saying, we just wouldn't know what to do with this. And so, it is certainly not a commentary on the quality. It's, we don't know what bookshelf in Barnes and Noble we would put this in. And therefore we just feel hesitant. And it's also the big four are conservative with a small c. They're always saying what sold last year, we have to make sure we do that again. And so when you're doing something like, hey, sci-fi book of Ruth, they're going, we didn't have a sci-fi book of Ruth last year, so we can't do that again. Right. And so small presses can be these wonderful places that can take some risks and say, yeah, but it's a really good book, and this sounded like a great idea to us. And so I'm glad Aris was like, yeah, let's jump on that and get that in readers' hands. It speaks well of them, and I think it is the right place for a book like that. And if you as a listener or watcher of this show are saying, but it just sounds like a great book, I would totally buy that at a Barnes and Noble. Yes, you would, and yet the big four wouldn't take a risk on it. So I get that from Aris, but check that out, Next of Kin. I'm excited about that one.
Thank you.
Okay, so where can folks find you online?
Yeah, so melindamitchell.com is my website, but social media, I'm on Facebook a lot. I don't know, I'm this Zennial generation that got on Facebook and not much else. But and there it's Melinda W. Mitchell, and on Instagram too. I'm also on BlueSky. Rev Mindy was my Twitter handle. Mindy's another name I go by, Mindi. So Rev Mindy on BlueSky. I miss Twitter. I loved Twitter, but it became what it has been the last 6 months to a year. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not there anymore. But yeah, you can find me. Mostly Instagram, Facebook, and BlueSky.
Yeah, Melinda W. Mitchell, but all lowercase, all one. So we'll post that in the show notes as well. Folks can catch up with you there. So who else, in your opinion, should I have on this show?
So I was thinking about this, and I think you should have Spencer Ellsworth on, who is an author in Bellingham, Washington. He wrote the Starfire trilogy for Tor.com, which it's really cool concept. It's spaceships that are made out of, they're organic, they're giant bugs in space.
Ah.
And they have soul swords. The characters have soul swords, which is like a lightsaber. So kind of Star Wars thing. But it's really got some good underdog characters, and you're rooting for them, and they're novellas, so they're easy. There's 3 of them, easy to read. And then he wrote The Great Fairy Strike, which was published, I think, by a small press, and it's hilarious. It's 1800s London. There's a vampire journalist and a dwarf, and the dwarf comes across a copy of the Communist Manifesto, and all of a sudden the Fae are on strike. It's just really
as
fun.
a union guy, this makes me so happy. I've got to check that out.
That's footnotes in the story, and it's one of those that's annotated with there's a narrator commentary, and it's just great. It's just fun. It's a really fun read. He's hilarious. Spencer and I did karaoke at the last Cascade Writers I was at, so he's a good person to have on. I'd also recommend, I think Amanda already said, Lorraine Gilman. She's also hilarious and fun and a witty writer. And then TJ Deschamps, she writes East Side Hedwig is her first one. She has East Side stories and then the West Side Olympians. And it's these characters who are kind of in midlife is what she writes, not young, not these young adults that are out there. They're moms who are like fighting off necromancers and baking cookies for the PTA. They're doing whatever they have to do. They're dealing with real life, like having to go to the bank and having to pay bills and having to deal with stuff and dealing with magic and the Fae, and they're just great. So TJ Deschamps would be great to have on for that.
Yeah, that does sound like a really, that is a positive kind of twist we need in the industry too. Like there is this inclination to always go, all the characters have to be either 17 or 28, right?
Right.
No, there are a lot of us who are neither of those things.
Yeah, hers are in their 40s, and it's great. And she's an indie author, and she's had a successful career so far, and she's just been great. She was one of the early beta readers for Next of Kin. So
very cool.
Also big support. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I will reach out to those folks. Okay, so there's some other folks I have to thank before we sign off. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. Thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email that to me. And thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. Thank you always, Doug. I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of Not a Pipe Publishing, so please go to notapipepublishing.com and check out the amazing books by writers who did not procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Please check out Melinda's Next of Kin. Tell a friend about it too. Click on that 5th star and write a review. You'll make Melinda's day, and it really makes a big difference for authors. And if you've got the time, click on that thumbs up for this show as well and write a comment. I would love to share some, YouTube or comments, on various podcasting apps with Apple or the Apple Podcast and YouTube comments. We can even share them on the show. So write a funny one, say whatever you want about us, but if it is positive, we can share it on the show. Okay, so Melinda, what's your advice for our listeners going into this next week?
So I just say keep writing, don't give up, and make writing friends. I think that's the important thing. And I know, not just published author friends, but your writing friends who are still in the trenches, still trying to, we're all in this together, and success looks differently for different people, and it might take you 7 years like me, or 10 or 15. It can take a long time, but don't give up. And if you put something on the shelf, it'll come back. It'll come back. It's not a failure. I don't like the word failure. It's just a transition. It's just a pause.
Oh, I completely agree. I also say to folks, a novel without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives need spaces too. So don't ignore the spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, we're still proud of you.
If I take my time